So probably not that great. But I think what probably is more important is experience solving problems, solving complex problems, and experience understanding what works and what doesn't work. You know, I was fortunately given by God an opportunity, which was a very unusual thing for a surgeon to be given the kind of opportunities that I've had, but to sit on the board of Kellogg for 18 years and the board of Costco for 16 years, and to be heavily involved with the decision making as these companies expanded and prospered across the world, and being able to understand what works and what doesn't work. And also had an opportunity to put together a national nonprofit, the Carson Scholars Fund. And as you may or may not know, 9 out of 10 nonprofits fail. Not only has it been successful, it's active in all 50 states and has won the Simon Award, which is only given to one philanthropic organization in the country each year. Comes with a check for $250,000, by the way. And the Ronald McDonald House Charity Award, only one organization in the country gets that, also a 6-figure check. And other awards, but we don't do it for the awards, we do it for the effect. Because many teachers tell us when we put a scholar in their classroom, the GPA of the whole class goes up over the next year. Because the kids are not just focusing on the quarterback and the all-state wrestler. All of a sudden, it's this really smart kid who's brought this glory to our school. And others try to emulate that. And that's a very important factor. And we also put in reading rooms all over the country. And these are places that no little kid could possibly pass up, the way they're decorated. And we target especially Title I schools, where a lot of kids come from homes with no books, go to a school that has no library or poorly funded library. Those kids are not likely to become readers. And statistics show us that 70 to 80% of high school dropouts are functionally illiterate. So if you can truncate that way downstream, you really change the direction of their lives. These are the kinds of things that we as Americans have to be thinking about doing. And how do we change people's lives? Not how do we hand things to people and make them dependent, but how do we give them the resources to use their God-given talents to become independent and to become part of the fabric. And this is a country, you know, that had, and I use the past tense, had the can-do attitude. It was the thing that really propelled us to the pinnacle of the world. And now that's being replaced by the what can you do for me attitude. And we have to have the kind of leadership that doesn't like go around condemning people, but instead just shows people that there is a different and a better way. I remember a couple of months ago when I went to New York City to speak at the National Action Network, which is Al Sharpton's annual conference. Way to go. And a lot of conservatives were saying, he's crazy. That shows he's crazy. He's lost his mind. He's totally lost his mind. And, you know, when I got there, you know, they weren't all that enthusiastic to see me. And when Al Sharpton introduced me, he said, you know, Carson and I probably don't agree on anything. He said, I doubt we could agree that today is Wednesday. But, you know, he's had a distinguished career. We should listen to what he has to say. And the people were like, oh, my God, we better listen to this guy. But, you know, I started talking about dependency versus independence, and about human potential, and about how you turn the dollar over in your own community a couple of times before you send it out to develop wealth, and how you reach back and pull other people along rather than just fleeing with the money. And I talked about contributions of African Americans to the fabric of America, and I ended up talking about Elijah McCoy, who was a black inventor, invented the automatic lubrication system for locomotive engines. In fact, he had so many inventions, whenever something came out, people would say, is that a McCoy? Is that the real McCoy? But, you know, by the time I finished, they were so enthusiastic, standing ovation, they all wanted pictures and photographs, and Al Sharpton's like, what's going on? Are these my people? You know? But you know, the fact of the matter is, it divides people. What we've seen in recent years is just the opposite. We have people who want to divide us on every possible level. War on women. Anytime there's any conflict between people of two races, it's a racial war. You know, America's a racist place. And then, you know, income. Always got to have class warfare. Age now, you know, intergenerational. Religion, everything. They want to divide and conquer. You know, it was Jesus himself who said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. Never has stood, never will stand. And yet we see that going on. And it is a major threat to this country. The other thing that frightens me about our country is our incredible fiscal irresponsibility. We are jeopardizing the future of our children, our grandchildren, and multiple generations beyond them with our incredible irresponsibility. You know, a lot of times you hear about the $18.4 trillion national debt. And that's a lot of money. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's a lot of money. I mean, if you tried to pay back $18 trillion, $10 million a day, 365 days a year, it would take you over 5,000 years. And we're putting that on the backs of our young people. You know, Thomas Jefferson said, it's immoral to pass debt to the next generation. If he were transported back here, he would immediately have a stroke or a heart attack. I can't believe this. This is not going on. But that is the good news, because it's actually much worse than that. There's something called the fiscal gap. That is the unfunded liabilities that our government owes Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all of the departmental cabinet programs and agencies, what we owe versus what we expect to collect in terms of taxes and other revenues. Now those two numbers should be very close together, just like it is in your household if you run an efficient household. And when they're not, you develop a fiscal gap. Our fiscal gap right now sits around $211 trillion. So if somebody gave us a check today for $18.4 trillion and said your national debt is paid off, some people would be dancing in the street. It's only because they don't know that we're still in a lot of trouble, amazing trouble. You know, Greece, we've heard about all the trouble they're in. The reason that we're not in that kind of trouble is because our currency is the reserve currency of the world, which means we can print money. Now that's a title that generally goes with the #1 economy in the world. You get to be the reserve currency. We've been the #1 economy since the 1870s. And we lost that designation last year. China is now the #1 economy in the world. So the wheels should be starting to turn in your head and saying, are they going to want to be the reserve currency? Are we going to lose the ability to print money? It might not be a totally bad thing, because I can tell you, if Greece could print money, they wouldn't be in trouble either. Or at least they wouldn't think they were in trouble. They would be, but they wouldn't think they were in trouble, which is the same situation with us. We don't think we're in trouble, but we're in humongous trouble. And the only reason that China is not going to be the reserve currency anytime soon is because their banking system is incapable of handling it. It's in shambles, which is fortunate for us. Now, you know, they've recently started pushing the Asia International Investment Bank, infused $100 billion into it the week before last. Some of our allies are also getting involved with this, which means they are working on shoring up that financial system. It's probably a matter of years, I don't know how many, before they might be in the condition to be able to become the reserve currency, if they're still the #1 economy. However, I personally believe that if we get the right kind of leadership in place, we will become the #1 economy again. You know, we have the most powerful economic engine the world has ever known. And when you think about it, we declared our independence in 1776, and less than 100 years we're the #1 economic power in the world. Think about that. That is unbelievable. But it's because we created the right kind of environment, the environment that encourages entrepreneurial risk-taking and capital investment, and those are the things that really stimulate the economy and create opportunities. Also, recognize that, you know, we were a country of small businesses. You know, somebody would say, you know what, I think I'm going to start a restaurant. And, you know what, I'm pretty good with cabinetry, and I'm going to start this. And it just kept growing and growing because people could see the benefits of their labor, and it accrued to them, it accrued to their families. Of course, they paid some taxes. It wasn't ridiculous like it is now, because, you know, the things that are really depressing us right now are the taxes and the regulations. Just let me give you one example. With Obamacare, which, as you know, I hate, it is just a horrible. I'll tell you. Let me just tell you why I hate it so much before I go with it. It's not because it doesn't work, and it's not because it's too expensive. It's because this is a country that was designed around the people, of, for, and by the people. The government is supposed to be there to facilitate life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. With Obamacare, the government comes along and says, we don't care what you people think. We're shoving this down your throat, and if you don't like it, too bad. That's completely antithetical to the whole concept of our nation. And if we accept that, what else do we do? And that's why it's important, you know, no matter what has happened, we cannot accept the government usurping the power of the people, because the people are supposed to be at the pinnacle in this nation. And it's not the government, Supreme Court included. You know, they are not what they were designed to be. They become a partisan group now. You have this group of partisans here, this group of partisans here, and they don't particularly care what the issue is. They care about their ideology, which means that as a nation, we're going to have to start thinking about what are we going to do about it. It's going to come back to our Congress, and we're going to have to start finding some kind of way for the judicial branch to be reviewed. We can't just let people do what they want and impose things upon the people, because we do that, we're no different than a monarchy or an oligarchy. And this is not what we were designed to be. So that obviously is going to have to change. But anyway, getting back to Obamacare, you know, the employer mandate, think about what that kind of regulation does to us. It used to be you would start a business and you were so proud. You called your mom and you said, Mom, I started my own business and I got 10 employees. And the next year you had 20 employees, and next year 30, and then 40. But now you get there and you say, whoa, better stop. Don't want to hit 50. Because once I hit 50, all of our profits are gone and a lot of complications occur. That is, again, antithetical to the whole concept of economic growth in our country. And then our corporate tax rate is the highest in the developed world. So right now, there's over $2 trillion in American dollars sitting overseas, which they would love to bring back here, but not at a 35% tax rate. They don't want to bring it back. So I've sat around a corporate table many an afternoon talking about what are we going to do with all of this money over there, with these billions of dollars. We would like to bring them back here, maybe open up another plant, maybe do this, but no, that's not practical, so we got to leave it over there. Well, you know, we obviously need to lower that corporate tax rate to make it commensurate with everybody else. I would actually lower it below everybody else, so we actually start drawing business in here. Because what socialists don't understand is that the more business you have, the more revenue it generates, The more revenue it generates, the more tax revenue you have, which allows you actually more money. The way they think is, let's say you have a 10% flat tax. This guy who made $10 billion, he puts $1 billion in the pot. This guy who made $10, he puts $1 in the pot. They say, but the guy who put $1 billion in, he's still got $9 billion left. That's not fair. We need to take more of his money. And so, they keep taking his money, which means the next year he puts in less than $1 billion. And pretty soon he's saying, I got to put my money somewhere else. I can't leave it here and let these people take it all. That's the way socialists think, and that's the way it always happens. Whereas capitalists think, this guy made $10 billion and he put $1 billion in. Let's improve the economic environment so that next year he can make $20 billion and put $2 billion in. And it was that kind of thinking that propelled America to the pinnacle so fast. We have to stop allowing the purveyors of class envy to prevail, because the fact of the matter is, if we improve the infrastructure and the fabric of the nation, the boats rise for everybody. But when we start getting greedy and we say, no, he couldn't have that because I should have that, and I'm not going to work for it, but he should give it to me anyway, that is just un-American. And that's a very important word I just used, un-American. Because, see, there is such a thing as an American culture and an American identity. And people know about it the world over. Have you ever heard about being un-Italian? Un-English or un-French? No, it's only un-American, because there is something about being an American that is very special. And we have to recapture that and not let that disappear from us, because in the culture in which we live now, the secular progressive culture, they are in the process of driving out all of the values and principles that made us who we are, that gave us our identity, and trading them for political correctness, which means we are beginning to lose our identity, to lose our vision. And what does the Bible say? In Proverbs 29:18, without a vision, the people perish. And that's exactly what's happening. You can see the downspin that's going on right now. The other thing that I think is threatening our existence is our failure to take a leadership role in the world. Because our positions will be, what we vacate will be filled in by others. And as they become more and more powerful, our influence becomes less. And so you can see all the trouble that's springing up all over the world. And I'm not saying that we have to be into everybody's business, but I'm saying there is something that results from having strong leadership. Sort of like a third grade classroom. The teacher doesn't have to be standing at every pupil's desk, but the teacher does have to be there. If the teacher's not there, it's chaos. It's total chaos very quickly. And that's the way, the world is becoming very quickly. And we also have a responsibility to go out and start talking to people in our spheres of influence about what kind of country we want to have. Because the reason that we have the kind of leadership that we have now is because people sat on their hands. People didn't go out and vote in 2012. More people who were eligible to vote did not vote in 2012 than voted for either candidate. 30 million evangelicals did not vote. But what people have to understand is when you don't vote, you vote. It's just that you voted for, the people who probably don't have the best interests of America at heart. And there is absolutely no way that we should have the kind of leadership that we have in the United States of America. It is antithetical to the principles and values of the American people. And you look at, for instance, this Iranian deal that was just made. I mean, this is the most asinine agreement that I think we've ever made. I mean, is supposed to keep them from getting nuclear weapons. Are you kidding me? It does nothing to disassemble their nuclear infrastructure. It lifts the economic sanctions so that it infuses into the world's #1 exporter of terrorism billions of dollars. You know, it allows arms deals and ballistic missile propagation. And the negotiation process is absolutely absurd. Instead of 24/7 anywhere inspections at any time, now you got to go through a committee, which Iranians sit on, by the way, and they get to decide, well, let's talk about this. And they'll talk about it as long as they need to talk about it until they get the area cleaned up. And then they say, okay, you can go and inspect, no problem. I mean, are you kidding me? A third grader could negotiate better than that. So, you know, and it makes you wonder, are we that naive, or are there some other agendas going on here? But here's the bottom line. Regardless of which one it is our responsibility. Everybody in this room has a sphere of influence. You need to use it. Just like they did in the pre-revolutionary days of America. They didn't like the tyranny rained upon them by King George III. And they started having town meetings in their barns, in their living rooms, in the center of the town, inviting everybody, even the loyalists. What kind of country do you want to have? What are you willing to fight for? What are you willing to die for? And they encourage each other, and that's how a ragtag bunch of militiamen defeated the most powerful and professional military force on earth, along with their faith in God. And those things exist today, but we have to be active. We can't be more interested in who's on Dancing with the Stars or who's playing in a football game. We have got to get involved and understand, because, you know, it was Franklin and Jefferson who emphasized being informed. He said our system of government and our freedom is dependent upon an informed and educated populace. He said if we ever become less than that, we will rapidly change. Why would we rapidly change? Because people wouldn't have the wherewithal to analyze what they were being told. And slick and dishonest politicians and news media take advantage of that. And they know how to manipulate things and to present things in a way that somebody who isn't well informed will say, oh, yeah, wow, yeah. And that's why it is absolutely crucial. And that's why, you know, you need to talk to your cousin or your uncle who hasn't voted in 20 years and tell him he needs to get involved. You need to go to your sister or your aunt or your grandmother who's in a nursing home and can't get to the polls. And you need to make sure that they have an absentee ballot. And if they can't fill it out, you need to help them fill it out. And if everybody gets 3 people in your sphere of influence who didn't vote last time involved, it will make all the difference in the world. I'm telling that to audiences all across this nation. And you know, it's starting to resonate. The only reason that, you know, I can actually be involved in this political race, even though all the pundits and experts say, oh, he's not a professional politician, he can't do it. It's impossible. Why would he even think about it? But we're here. And the reason we're here is not because of the established political system. If we were depending on that, they would be right. We wouldn't be here. But we're here because we've had over 250,000 donations from normal people, the average donation being $52. You know, we're not going after the billionaires and the lobbyists because I don't want anything to do with them, to be honest with you. You know, they're welcome to contribute if they're concerned about America, but there's no buying of influence. And there's only one special interest group that somebody who's interested in healing this country should be beholden to, and that's the American people. So, let me say that.